Welcome back to the Faith and Business Podcast. I am your host, Elle Edwards. I am here with mentoring, accountability, and this podcast to help you embrace your inner weirdo, help you be youier, so you can make Jesus CEO of your life and business. Now, all this week, if you've been listening along, you know we are starting to explore the idea of you being youier, embracing your inner weirdo. And I hope by now, we're now on episode 4, that you are feeling like, oh yeah, this is exciting, woohoo. However, we're going to pause for a minute. I'm going to play devil's advocate and ask you a question. What is the alternative? I want you to now bear with me for a minute, because traditional business wisdom tells you that when you're writing a sales page, now if most people listening to this are people in business, it is after all the Faith and Business Podcast. So you've probably been told the wisdom around when you are trying to sell something to people. You need to press on their pain points. You need to paint a picture of, if you don't make this change, or if you don't do this thing, or if you don't try this product I'm going to sell you, what happens as a result? That's kind of what this episode is about. But I'm not going to be pressing on your pain points too much. I'm not going to paint a picture of doom and gloom. You're kind of going to do that for yourself instead, because I want you to think about, if tomorrow, this is a quick spoiler alert, tomorrow I'm going to be encouraging you to make a choice. And if tomorrow you decide no, you go, right, Elle, I am not ready to do this work yet. I want to ask you today, well, what does that look like? If you decide tomorrow that it's too scary, you're not ready, you don't know all the answers, you're really not sure, where does that decision take you? What is the alternative? Is there an alternative? The answer is yes, of course there's an alternative. You can continue. If you're already sort of like moving forward day by day, just sort of being, but not really being all in and being fully self-expressed, it's got you thus far. I imagine the fact that you're able to listen to this podcast means that, you have enough money to pay your bills and life isn't an absolute disaster. The roof is not falling down. You have food on your table. Maybe not literally if it's not dinner time right now, but you're able to feed yourself, you clothe yourself. The reality is, you don't have to be you. You don't have to fully embrace your inner weirdo. You don't have to be the person God made you to be. You don't. I know you might be listening to this going, well, oh, okay. But it's true. You don't. There is an alternative. You can just carry on bimbling along and just sort of being and see what happens. But if you're going to do that, as we're going to talk about tomorrow, I want you to make a conscious choice around that. Because if you decide not to be you, you could have a perfectly reasonably adequate, fine life. It's not like as if everything's going to suddenly implode around you just because you decide no. But I want you to think about it. What is the alternative? If you're not going to be you, who are you going to be? If you're not going to be fully self-expressed, if you're not going to, show up all in the person God made you to be, who are you going to be? And I guess the follow-up question to that is, well, why? Why do you want to be somebody other than you? Now, this ties in with this whole comparisonitis thing. It's one of the most deadly diseases on the planet, as far as I can tell. We do it a lot in business. If you're starting a new venture, the Faith and Business Playground at the time of recording this is relatively new. And so it's really easy to see other people who are at a different stage in their business journey. And maybe you've had this experience. You see people further along in their business journey than you are. And you see that they have an audience and they do this and they're doing that. And they seem to, everything seems easy to them. And then you look at what your life is like and you're like, oh, and that comparisonitis. And you think, oh, well, I should be in this position and this should be happening. And what's wrong with me that this isn't happening? That comparisonitis is tragic and can be deadly, because if you sit in comparisonitis for too long without recognizing what you're doing, the real danger is that you might give up, you might stop, you might go, oh, it's just too hard, it's not working. We talk sometimes, this has come up in church, but my mum introduced me this idea of pushing at doors. So because we don't get text messages from God anymore, like we do sometimes, I've had this experience of what I've called a divine download. So I've sat there and just woken up. For example, if you played along with Reclaim Your Year Live a few weeks ago, I shared with you that I woke up on the Thursday morning with God going, right, do this, do this, do that. I'm like, oh, okay. But for me, that's the exception to the rule. Most of the time, I don't get suddenly like this really clear plan. Noah, it's fascinating. Noah, of course, he had very clear specifications on how to build the ark. Solomon or David or whichever one, I want to say Solomon, when they were building the temple, the different versions of the temple, they had very clear dimensions that they were meant to go by. And so God does give clear plans, but a lot of the time he doesn't. A lot of the times we maybe only know the first couple of steps, and then it's about what my mum calls pushing at doors. And we try stuff and we give it a go. And if you fall into the trap of comparisonitis and you look around at what everybody else is doing and you don't measure up, you might mistakenly go, oh, that door is staying shut, and then you give up. And that is a real tragedy, as far as I can see it, because actually, what if you're stuck with it for a bit longer? Sometimes it's not the right time, let's be honest. I mean, this work that I'm doing now, I've been quite open about this. I started these conversations around Yuya and reclaiming Christianity for love and all this sort of stuff 5-6 years ago. This is not, although the Faith and Business Playground as a website is new, I've been doing this work for ages and trying different iterations of it. Now, what I don't know is whether it didn't take off in the way that I anticipated it would back then. Did that happen because I fell into the trap of comparisonitis and gave up too soon? Or did God put the brakes on it and say, no, you're not ready yet? I don't know. I want to be kind to myself and say that it's the latter, because the journey that I've been on personally over the last 5 or 6 years, and even as recently as the last 5 or 6 months, makes me much more ready and prepared to do this work now than I was then. So I want to be kind and go, no, God knew I wasn't ready. It wasn't his timing. But we don't really know. And so the real danger, if we fall down the trap of comparisonitis and looking around at what everybody else is doing and how they're being, and then you find yourself not measuring up, is you might stop too soon. You might give up. You might just never quite finding yourself reaching God's absolute best for you. And that's a real tragedy. And so I want to encourage you today, really. I know I started out, it sounds a bit doom and gloom, and I talked about pressing on pain points, but I don't want this to be a negative episode. I want this to be an encouraging episode, because by contrast, you can realize that actually, no, I'm not gonna just give up. I'm not going to fall into the trap of comparisonitis. I am going to step forward, even when I don't know everything, and be this person God made me to be. And that really is tomorrow's call to action. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself on that one, because tomorrow is when I really want you to make that choice and make it clear, yes, this is what I'm going to do. So we'll get into that one tomorrow. For today, I want you to imagine a scenario. And again, you can do this as a written exercise if you'd like to. And if you want to share it in the Facebook group, please do. But what I want to encourage you today is to just imagine the alternative. What is the alternative? What does it look like if I don't do this work? What does it look like if I keep getting myself tripped up with comparisonitis? Just sit with that for a bit, not for too long because it's a bit miserable. But then, by doing that work, you are giving yourself the opportunity to make an informed choice tomorrow. So give it a go, sit with it, see what comes up, ask God to help you. We've already talked about this and we'll talk about it again. He knows, he loves you, he wants to help you with this stuff. So ask him, and then do please, if you're feeling like you'd like to, I would love it if you come and share some of the stuff that comes up for you as well. faithandbusinessplayground.com, there's a button there that you can click that will take you directly to the Facebook page. The Facebook group, Faith and Business Playground Facebook group. It's free, and together we can chat about some of this stuff. And then tomorrow we get to make a choice. I'll be back tomorrow with that one. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. I shall catch up with you then. Take care. Bye-bye.